Hey, what's up, everybody? On this game, I want to show an example of how to play against an opponent who is playing super defensive and cramped, basically allowing you to take a lot of space. Often, these type of players um, sometimes would like to bait their opponent into overextending their position and then counterattacking, which is a fantastic strategy, especially against aggressive players and also young players such as children, teenagers that just like to attack and sacrifice pieces. Many times you can bait them by playing cramped and slowing down the game, and they lose patience, and then they start to make mistakes, whereby you can counteract them. So in this particular video, I'm going to use an example um, from 1905 from Frank Marshall, the first American champion, and he had the white pieces, and this game took place uh, in Ostend, I believe, against player Alapin, Simon Alapin. And the game's going to start off in a Pyrrhic variation. And Alapin plays in a timid manner. He plays knight bd7. Um, and you probably see this a lot in blitz where players will just kind of hold back, like c6, g6, bishop g7, etc. And it seems like they're not doing anything. And what usually happens to a lot of players is they don't find the correct continuation or way to really punish white for these black for these particular uh, types of sins in the opening, and then eventually the game teeters out to equality. So that's why I'm showing you this example, is because the same thing happens to Marshall, who's a great attacking player. He wound up winning this game at the end, but I'm not going to show you the whole game. I'm going to just show you up to um, basically where he allowed Alapin to equalize, and then I'll show you what he could have done and basically how you should play and what you should look for in general in these type of positions. So knight bd7. What's wrong with knight bd7? Right? Of course, it's not a losing move, but let's look at the demerits of it. First of all, this move commits the knight way too early to this square and has little influence on the center. You got to remember, ultimately, you want your knights to um, go up the board. So, for instance, you want the knight to be at c6 and eventually maybe at d4 and getting, uh, to your opponent's territory. So, this move doesn't even really develop the knight, right? It's also blocking the bishop, and it does nothing to attack white center or stop him from doing anything. It's a purely, um, waiting move. Yes, eventually black might want to attack the center, c5 and e5, right? So black is basically giving you time here because since the knight is not really developed and it's going to have to move once again in order to allow this bishop to come out and to attack the center eventually, you're getting time and space. These are two advantages that are temporary, however. So what that means is that if you don't use the advantages, that eventually they'll dissipate. Your opponent will catch up in development, and he will gain time, and he will reorganize his pieces, and so you'll lose what you have of what he's giving you. All right, so keep that in mind. So this means with these temporal advantages that you have to exploit them immediately. The game continue f4. Excellent move because if black wanted to play e5, he could have played e5 right here on move 3. Okay? And this famous variation like D takes. Queens come off the board, and it's real hard to claim an advantage here. Although theoretically, white has some type of advantage. Usually, masters won't trade there; they'll just play knight f3 and keep the tension in the position. Then this is better position to look forward to as white. But going back after knight bd7, since black didn't play e5, White is able to play f4. Now, normally a move like f4 might be a waste of time, but that's if black was actively participating in the battle for the center. Since black is wasting time and not really attacking the center, this gives white um, the luxury of playing uh, extra moves, basically, like f4, instead of having to play the knight out to f3 immediately. So he can build the center even more here, and this is what he does, and this is the best move in the position. So now black plays e5, and now Marshall just develops. He plays knight f3. This is very important. Remember, the advantages are space and time here, so therefore you don't want to relinquish either without transferring them into another advantage. And that's the law of advantages in chess. You never want to give up an advantage unless you trade it for something else, another advantage. You just don't lose the advantage. So if you gain space, you don't want to give up the space and say not have material in exchange for that. Right? Once you get something, you never want to lose it. You only want to exchange it or increase the advantage that you have already. So if you can't exchange space for anything else, then you want to keep what you have or at least gain more space. You just never just want to lose anything. So this move, knight f3, of course, it's put more pressure on the center, and he would love for Alapin to just give up his center by exchanging on d4 or f4. All right, it would make little sense for white to exchange in the center. Why is that? Because black would benefit by the liberation of his pieces, right, and the waste of time by white. Right, these are the two advantages that I talked about: space and time. So if white exchanges in the center, okay, this is going to help black because the exchanges will relieve black's cramped position, and white will also be wasting time in these exchanges because he's used time to erect his own center. This is why you play knight f3 and you ignore that. Game 10 continued c6. Again, you'll see a lot of players playing in this cramped manner. Okay, again, black is not ruining his pawn structure, but what he's doing again is he's taking liberties, taking time. He's not really developing. Okay, so but still, you must understand the idea here. What's the idea? Well, black is initiating action on the queen side, planning b5, queen c7, a6, b4, right? With those type of ideas and attacking on the queen side, right? But all this takes time and is very slow. All right. So this is meant by the old adage, meet flank attack with the central strike, and this is exactly what white should do here. Okay, so black is taking all this time, so this is a signal for white to step up his attack. Perhaps try to open a position at this point to exploit black's slow plans. So far, Marshall has played correctly. Here, he makes a mistake, and this allows black to equalize immediately. And this is what I'm talking about. This happens to many of us. Why is this not the best move? Well, I just told you that black's plan is to expand on the queen side. Okay, so the bishop puts it right in the line with that, right, with black's plans. Also, in some lines, knight takes e4 becomes possible, followed by d5. So this is just a tactical liability at this point. All right. Of course, Alapin played b5, but he could have played a simple e takes d4 here, and knight takes d4, bishop e7, castles, rook e1, and then rook e8. And and then of course play d5. So for example, h3, d5. And like say e takes d5, and just simply knight b6. And you see how the bishop becomes a liability. White center is now relinquished, and which gets rid of white space advantage, and then also black develops his pieces. Okay, and so the space advantage is gone, and black has also gotten rid of white's time advantage. That's why this variation is no good with bishop c4. However, Alapin played b5. All right, and this gives black an opportunity, excuse me, white an opportunity to proceed tactically here with either bishop takes f7 or f takes e5. Marshall did neither. Being a great attacker player that he was, he uh he didn't play either of these moves. Instead, he played bishop d3, and at this point, uh, the game is pretty much equal. Now, Alapin went on to lose this game. I mean, errors were exchanged back and forth, but at this point, the game is pretty much even. Queen c7 was played. Castle, bishop e7, king h1, real slow move, and then castle, and the game was pretty much even. So here, the position, just basically who makes the last mistake at this point. But if you want to get an advantage in this position, from here, you take in the center. You open up the position. So d takes e5, right? What are you doing here? White resolves the center at the most favorable time, as he still remains in complete control of it. All right, and black cannot really counteract this. Right, he captures, d takes, f takes. All right, you see black has to succumb to the initiative here. Right, he has to do something about this pawn. So knight g4. Okay, and the idea is to gain the pawn back, of course, and then blockade the e pawn at the same time. So if he can make this happen, then this would justify his play. However, again, he doesn't have time. He's at a time disadvantage, and this is what you're continuing to exploit. E6, right? Now you give the pawn back, but you're totally disrupting the position. So f takes e6, knight g5. Again, this is all exploiting the time in the position. And when you're creating threats, you're exploiting time because the opponent has to react to the threats. So here the knight is hanging, it's threatened, and also e6. All right. So what do you do? Right, knight ge5 perhaps. Okay, h5 is possible. Okay, but the position starts looking a little murky here. Right. So knight d e5. You can just feel free to trade queens there. h3. And bishop f4, and the idea is to, of course, remove the defender of f7. Knight goes here. And this is excellent position for white. Back to the main line, though. After knight g e5, then you just take, and you just simply win the pawn with tempo. Queen b6. Bishop d2. And knight c7, of course not. Queen takes b2 because queen takes b2, knight c7 check. This is why white is not afraid to just play bishop d2 here. So knight c5, of course trying to initiate some trades, but then queen h5 check would come. And knight f7, of course. You can't play g6 here. Again, you don't have the time because this is being attacked. So knight f7. Knight takes f8, rook takes f8, and castle. Need I say more? And look at the difference. Okay, and look at what white's play has snowballed into. Okay, he's fully exploited the time um, element in the position, right? Black was playing, um, you know, close to the vest and not really doing anything, right? And when a player plays like that, he needs to keep the position closed, all right? So when the player's wasting time, one of the first things you should be thinking is how can I get this position opened, right? Because you want to exploit that. Like just having the and having a big center also, um, right, is the reason why you have those pawns in the center is you're gaining space, right? But you're also seeking to expand and use those pawns to attack and rip open your opponent's defenses. All right, and that's what you saw in this variation. You saw the big pawn center, right? The pawns on the D, E, and F files, but then after the error, right, C6 in this variation, you see now is the time, right? So the center is basically destroyed, but for a purpose. So you can see the example of one variation, excuse me, one advantage being traded for the other. So in this situation, white is allowing his center to be destroyed, but now he's on attack and he has initiative. And as you see, this initiative just continues. And you can see this is a clear win here for white. Understand also that having more space than your opponent means that you have more options as to where to actually place your pieces. So you must think of all those things like when you see the opening unfolding. Like if you have more space, that means you have more options. So when the position does open up, your pieces are going to be able to land in better situations where your opponent is not going to be prepared. He's going to have to scramble to get his pieces out. Again, just looking at this situation on board here, right? At this moment at C6 with white to move, it looks, innocuous, like just at first glance. But then once the position opens up rapidly, right, we see white gain a little initiative, and next thing you know, white has all this space to where he can put his pieces in attacking positions. Now look how bad this knight looks on D7. It's completely useless. This knight is left hanging, right? And this is all due to this lack of space. So he has to move the same piece around. Right, queen has to come out. Notice how the knights are kind of like blocking the position, right? They're in the way of each other, all due to lack of space. The knight comes out, but again, it takes time. The knight moved here and moved there, moving the same piece. Again, has to move the same piece again just to protect. And white has a beautiful position. So again, and that's my analysis of that particular uh, position. Like I said, knight f3. And here, when you see c6, it's better just to take right here. And don't take and play don't take and play f5 either. Open the position. If you remember anything, open the position. Don't play that. Again, it just helps the opponent, right, that's playing in this way. Keep the position closed. So you just play a move like f5 here, for example. It's easy for him to catch up in development. Your lead in development at times is going to mean nothing if the position is closed. You can't do anything. You have to get it the position open, right? You have to start figure out how you can develop initiative and attacking chances from here. Some of you might ask, well, instead of c6, then what should black play? Well, black could play a bishop e7, You don't try to, I mean, he's at a disadvantage. I mean, with proper play, White is going to have an advantageous position here, right? He could capture, Black could capture in the center, but again, still, White is going to have a nice position no matter what, just due to the space advantage right here. Again, this shows that, the downside of developing the knight here. If the knight was here, White couldn't do that. So play would have to go say like knight c6, stuff like that. But then you can hit with b4 if you want, maybe, or just bishop e3. There's e5. Again, it's a difficult position for Black. The key is not necessarily to memorize the analysis, but to memorize the principles underlying it, right? And understanding that when your opponent plays in that kind of way where he's kind of not doing anything really, just figure out how you can get that position open and take advantage, right? So first analyze where your strong points are and what your advantages are, and then try to gear your play towards them and keep them in mind, and try not to lose any advantage that you have unless you're just trading it for another advantage or increasing. So your advantage should be increasing, or you're trading it for something else. So if you have space, but now you're giving up the space but you're getting material, that's okay. But just don't lose whatever it is you have. So at the beginning, look at the opening and just analyze, what do I have here in the position, and then keep that in mind and just try to hold on to uh what you have. Right? Each move you should ask the same question. Like, am I going to lose my space advantage or my time advantage if I do this move? That should be like your final um, question. And when you answer that question satisfactorily, then you can go and make the move here. So that is it for this particular um, video. Leave your questions below, and I'll try to answer all of the questions, um, because I know people are going to ask about different openings in different situations. That's why I try to make this video kind of based on general principles, because the general principles can be expanded and applied to all of the various openings um, in chess. But I don't mind discussing them anyway. So I hope you like that one. Um, Check those links below. Hit the thumbs up so it'll move the video up in the algorithm, and also look and you'll find videos related to the Pirk variation down there in the links below also. So I'll see you guys soon.